Welcome back to ReadingBear. Today, we will take a look at some new malicious compliance stories. And if you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comments. Let's go!
The first one is titled, "You Can't Park Here. This parking lot is for customers only." Years back I had a 1986 Chevy Cavalier. My dad gifted it to me, which was super nice of him. It was not the greatest car, but it got me from point A to point B usually without any problems. One day I was headed to a friend's place, but I forgot that the Woodward Dream Cruise was going on. Side note, people who live near this event call it the Woodward Nightmare Cruise. It's an unending line of classic cars driving up and down Woodward Avenue from Detroit to Birmingham, an annual mobile homage to Detroit being the Motor City, and good times if you like old cars, modified vehicles, or craziness like motorized sofas or barstools. As you can imagine, it draws quite a lot of people each year, and causes some extreme gridlock. So I'm caught in the cruise, and maybe one half an hour of stop and go traffic has my old car overheated. If I didn't get some coolant, my engine was gonna be done. I'm a few blocks from a gas station, but traffic just isn't moving, so I pulled into the first driveway and parked in front of a shop I had never noticed. As I pulled in, steam was seriously shooting out from under my hood. Just as I'm getting out my car, this 60-ish grey-haired lady in a purple skirt comes running out the shop and yells, "You can't park here, this is customer parking only." I looked at her and then my car, and she stammers, "You need to move your car or I'm calling the police." I wasn't going to move my car, driving at all would have literally killed it, but immediately inspiration for MC tickled my brain and I decided to walk into this woman's shop. She was clearly upset by this move and ended shadowing me around her shop, watching me like an angry hawk. The place turned out to be one of those new age incense, candle, astrology type shops. Okay, whatever, I can work with it. Partially to make my point, but mainly because I needed my car to cool off before driving it. I calmly scrutinized every single item she sold, all with her watching my every move. She followed me the entire time. In hindsight, I'm surprised that she didn't have a stroke. Meanwhile, this one other attendant working is getting her butt kicked by how busy this little place is the whole time, as she's doing all the actual work. I felt bad for the lady working, but I can practically guarantee this store lost a fair amount of money because this lady insisted on badgering me, both to shoplifting by other people, which I had no intention of, and to people just leaving because their checkout time was crazy long. About 3 hours later the crowds thinned out, and I had seen literally every item there was to see in this place. At this point I figured my car was cooled off enough to make the short drive to a nearby gas station. I snatched up a $1 item I'd come across hours ago. A tiny, violet-colored floating turtle-shaped candle, and I paid for it. She was still visibly angry and very unfriendly as she rang up this single, insignificant and inexpensive item. As I left, receipt in hand of course, I smiled and said, "Wow, it looks like I'm a paying customer, bye." Angry grey-haired lady actually said nothing, but she literally turned red in the face. Also, the second cashier was somehow laughing hysterically as I walked out. Oh, and my mum ended up loving the little turtle candle. The next one is titled, "Just Replace the Fuel Pump." Many moons ago, thankfully, I was employed by an automotive repair parts chain represented by, three cheery adolescents. It was my second stint with this particular company, and this time around, I was the assistant service manager at our location. A little backstory about me. I'm a car guy. Always have been, always will be. I've been turning wrenches as long as I could, ogling cars in parking lots since forever. I attended a very good local community college automotive technology program, got my ASE certificates, and in the time before this story I worked as a professional technician, a parts guy, and even had a brief stint in the performance aftermarket. For all intents and purposes, and for lack of a better term, I know my crap. The fun thing in dealing with retail, independent as opposed to manufacturer-run, like a dealership, auto repair shops, is that you truly get all kinds. But ask anybody in automotive repair and they'll pretty much confirm that know-it-alls are the absolute worst. See, when you have a clueless customer, they generally know they're clueless. And when you have a properly informed customer, they generally know they're well informed. Both of them are just fine to deal with, typically, and most people can understand and respect the knowledge and expertise that professionals have. But the know-it-all? There's something about the way their brain fires that means they just have to be right. Doesn't matter if they're wrong or not. Enter customer A. We'll call him John, because frankly I don't duckin' remember what his name actually was. John drove a mid-0 Chevrolet Silverado. Gold, 2-door, short bed. A pretty typical, practical truck by all accounts, and anybody familiar with GM trucks knows they're generally pretty straightforward when it comes to repairs. John had his truck towed in because it wasn't running. I was working the counter because one of my CSAs called in sick. I didn't mind working the counter as it kept me busy and made the day go by faster. So John comes in and tells me the truck isn't running. He wants to replace the fuel pump, because that's the problem. I go into my pitch and explain to John that we like to start off with an actual diagnostic, which is $90, but that if they opt to get the vehicle fixed on that visit we waive the $90. The nice thing about doing it that way is that if we diagnose the vehicle incorrectly, it's on us, and I would make it a point to make it right. But I was also blessed to have a pretty damn solid master tech in my shop who was great at his diags. So I explained that hey, if we start with a diag, find out it's the fuel pump and replace the fuel pump, it's literally the same price. But if we start with the diag and find out it's not the fuel pump, then we can tell him and fix the actual issue. Just replace the fuel pump. John is insistent that the fuel pump is at fault. I write up the estimate to the tune of about $600 and John signs off. I explain that since he didn't ask us to do a diagnosis, even if the fuel pump doesn't solve the issue, he's going to pay for the job in full. John says fine, just do it. Okay. Tech pulls the truck in, takes the bed off, swaps out the fuel pump and gets it all back together a few hours later. Lo and behold, the truck doesn't start. I call John up and explain the situation, then again ask him if he wants us to actually diagnose it. Now he authorizes the diag. My tech takes a look at it and find out that the power train control module has a fault. I call John back and get authorization to fix it, to the tune of another $600. We waive the $90 diagnostic, of course. Order up a new PCM, get it programmed, and a few hours later, the truck runs. When John returns to pay for it, grumbling about the $1,200-ish price tag, I remind him that he had the opportunity to have us diagnose it at the start and he wouldn't have had to pay for the fuel pump replacement. John was displeased with that. The next one is titled, "Customer Wants Me to Take Extra Steps to Protect Their Purchase from Scratching," even after I told him that it would be more scratched doing things his way. I was right. So I work at a place that sells metal. Customers come in and order what they want and we do what we gotta do and bring it out. Fairly simple. Most customers are great, this one was not. So this man comes in and orders 20 sheets of aluminum. For anyone that doesn't know, aluminum is a soft metal and scratches easily. When we receive the aluminum, it comes with sheets of paper friction fit in between to protect it from scratching. So I get the order, have it in hand, and I'm driving my forklift over and pull off the 20 sheets and then read the notes on the paper. The customer wants sheets of cardboard between each sheet of aluminum. So I take the sheets out assuming he just means the paper. Boy was I wrong. I get to the customer and he has a fit and asks where his cardboard is and I explain to him the paper. He informs me the paper isn't good enough and he wants cardboard. When I try to explain that moving the sheets onto cardboard and removing the paper individually will scratch up the material in the process, his reply was, "Maybe if you were smart enough to have a better job than this you would understand the basic thing I'm asking you to do." Now I get this a lot. I learn by doing and not by sitting in a classroom reading, so I struggled and didn't finish college. I don't fit into society's version of smart. I kind of brush it off and I go to do exactly what he asks. So I let me boss know the situation and I get someone to help me to reduce the inevitable scratches and we move all the sheets and put cardboard between them. The sheets were very thin, .030, and of course one or two got bent on an edge during the transition. So we finish up and I take the order out and load the customer and go on break. A few minutes later I hear the customer at our sales desk flipping out because I scratched up all of his sheets. And my boss has my back and politely informs him that we can take the sheets back for a restocking fee and he can purchase new ones since they know I followed his specific instructions. So he huffs and walks out. I may not have a degree, I may not be the brightest, but I know how to do my damn job, and even though I didn't like that he questioned my intelligence, karma quickly came and kicked him in the butt for me. The next one is titled, Our Landlord Tried to Sue Us Over Grass. A year ago my housemates and I received a notice to vacate our rental property because the landlord intended to renovate the house. You aren't allowed to evict someone for these reasons unless you actually go through with the repairs. A few months earlier the real estate agency contacted us to tell us they had never filed our paperwork, therefore making our lease and all other paperwork void. After living there for 4 years, we were given 2 months to find a new house. Every application we put in was rejected because the property managers of the potential rentals were ringing our real estate agency for references and being told they had never heard of us and that they weren't even aware our address was getting evicted. How is that possible? We only found this out because a close friend of mine is a real estate agent and she rang up pretending to ask for a reference. Of course we were never approved for a house. This made the 2 months extremely stressful as our agency refused to fix their mistake and insisted we never handed the correct paperwork in. Big fat lie. Side note, my real estate friend had recently started at a new agency close by replacing a woman named Erin that had been fired for neglecting her properties. When my friend rang up she quickly discovered our new property manager was the same woman she had just replaced. It's time to move out. We spent all our spare time going to inspections and applying for houses, so we barely had enough time to pack up our house properly. This meant unfortunately that we had to leave the lawn overgrown. Erin contacted me 3 weeks later asking me to go back and clean the inside of the oven that had accidentally been missed. I asked Erin at the time if the lawns were okay and she said yes. I usually email with them to have everything in writing, and this was literally the only phone call we ever had. A week after we had finished the clean we find out the real estate won't give us the bond back until they discuss with the landlord how much they were going to deduct as compensation for the lawns. I explained to Erin that she told us the lawns were okay because I had specifically asked about them and that almost a month had passed since we vacated. So of course it grew after we were gone. 2 weeks later we then found out that they had put Erin in charge temporarily while our real property manager Kate was on leave. It's still unresolved and Kate has returned from her holiday by now and is insisting Erin never told us the lawns were fine. I told Kate we wouldn't be paying for the lawn maintenance. She said she would figure it out with the landlord and get back to me. I wasn't happy, but I accepted the situation and waited whilst regularly asking for updates. During this time the house had been sold and never renovated, which was one of their many mistakes. 2 months later we get an offer for our reduced bond which I rejected. We had some iron burn marks on our carpet thanks to my housemate that we were expecting to pay for. We had offered a specific amount for the carpet that was suggested by my real estate agent friend. A week later we receive a notice that the landlord would be suing us so they could keep the bond without it being agreed upon. Attached to it is an invoice for the lawn maintenance that had been completed a month after we left and a quote to get the walls repainted due to mold growing in the bathroom because the fan didn't work, which was also another issue we tried for months to get fixed. They only included this because they knew I was 21 and thought I was easily intimidated and would cave under the idea of having to pay for more than the carpet and lawn. We also had the roof in one of the bedrooms drooping that was extremely dangerous and they ignored. I spent every day emailing Kate requesting every document they had during our lease because I knew they had our complaints about the roof and mold to take to the hearing. They lied through their teeth saying that it was all lost. I spent the whole week collecting evidence against them without their cooperation, annoying because it was the landlord suing us, not them, but they needed to cover their ass. The night before the hearing I notified Kate saying I'd be attending and also making my own claim against the real estate agency and provided some of my case: house being sold, date of grass maintenance, and neglect on agency part. They quickly realized how much I had against them and Kate called me immediately to tell me they were forcing the landlord to drop the case and said it was because they were too embarrassed to have a hearing over grass. This resulted in us getting our full bond back and saved us over $2,000. If they had acted in the legal 14-day period after vacating, then we would have had to pay it all. The next one is titled, Don't Come Back Until You've Shaved It Off. I work for a police force in the UK. In the good old days of policing, everyone had shiny shoes, impeccably smart uniforms, short back and sides haircuts and no tattoos. It seems those days are gone. This happened around 18 months ago when I, as a regular Bobby, was assigned to a new team. The force I work for isn't so large that I didn't know a few other people on the team, but I didn't know everyone. Somebody gave me the heads up to make sure I had my boots shined and uniform pressed, as the local inspector was old school and liked order and discipline. All fine, I did that anyway. Fast forward a few days and I am settling in nicely, got to know all of my colleagues, and we are having our daily briefing, which is usually taken by the shift sergeant. Today, however, our Sarge is on holiday, so the inspector is taking the briefing. We all stand when he enters, and in he walks, spots me and introduced himself. Hello PC Beardy Bloke 999, I'm Inspector Dibble. We have standards here that I expect you to adhere to. I'm thinking to myself that my boots are shined, my shirt and trousers have creases, my hair is well groomed. What does he mean? Then he says the magic words, and here's the MC. Go home and don't come back until you have shaved that fluff off your face. Now to explain, I have had a beard for around 10 years, it's rather large but well groomed and nobody has ever had a problem with it. There was no way in hell I was shaving it, and regulations are that as long as it's well groomed and not just stubble, then it's fine. He may have worded his request wrong, but who was I to argue? Yes sir, I replied and turned to walk out with the biggest shit-eating grin on my face. I'm sure my colleagues knew what I was going to do. I wrote an account of the incident in my pocket notebook and included all of the other officers' names in the account so they could verify. I then went home, and I stayed home for 3 days. As our Sarge was not at work and the inspector never thought to check or took much notice on who was in and who was not, he didn't miss my being there for the next 2 briefings he gave. Colleagues texted me and I just told them, sorry to leave you guys in the lurch, but I won't be back until Inspector Dibble calls me, apologizes and allows me to keep my face fuzz. After our days off, on the first day I'm due to be back, I am scheduled for a night shift, which means the inspector is not at work. I am summoned by phone to see the district chief inspector, who I knew and was a good guy. He basically tells me that I had technically done nothing wrong and wouldn't be disciplined for the days I had missed, but I really should apologize to Inspector Dibble because he did get his butt handed to him for ordering me to shave my beard. I was the most polite and well-mannered officer in front of Inspector Dibble after that, but I never apologized and neither did he, but after a while he realized the contribution I made and treated me with respect. I can't wait until he retires, as this story will make it into his leaving speech, I'm sure. The next one is titled, I Have to Get Permission to Shovel. Okay. I live in the upper Midwest, in a crappy apartment complex with a psychotic property manager. I mean psychotic in that she will answer the door for me while cocking her handgun. Okay, whatever. When I moved in, I informed the manager that I would be willing to do snow removal for free, as I have the equipment and I enjoy doing it. Something oddly satisfying, I guess. She told me to not do it for free, why not get paid for it? Alright, I can always use some extra money. The first couple snowstorms of the season, I was out as soon as I was off work, clearing the snow. It was requested that I get additional details on the property, and that I would be paid a certain amount. No problem. But I'm then told that I have to get permission ahead of time, and they only want it done once a week max. I'll play ball, I guess. It took me almost a month to get paid, and in that time span we got several more snowstorms. Nothing to write home about, but enough so that walking became a bit treacherous. Still haven't gotten paid? Guess what? No snow's getting removed. Snow got packed down so badly that one had to physically step down from the snowpack, instead of continue on level footing. I'm then told that property manager has gotten someone else to do the snow removal, and my services are no longer required. Today, we get a nice little ice storm, making everything extra slick. Guess what still hasn't been cleared out? Good luck using a snowblower on hard-packed snow and ice, ducker. I hope you have good insurance for when someone wipes out because you wouldn't pay me to keep things clean. The last one is titled, "Teacher Gets Exactly What She Asked When I Turn on My Camera." Background: I am currently in high school, and we have Zoom meetings in almost every class, every day for online school. I dislike it, especially having to have our cameras on. I get super self-conscious that anyone in my class could be looking at me, and I wouldn't know. A user in the comments pointed out that it could be paranoia, which I think it is. Being paranoid is the best way to describe the feeling. My English teacher, who we will call Ms. Stevens, is super extroverted and loves to see her students. This is all fine and dandy, but she obsesses over it. She yells at kids all the time for not having their cameras on, as she wants to see you participating in the class. I personally don't think students should have to invite their class into their personal life for a grade. After a while, she got fed up with people ignoring her demands, so she started docking points for the day's assignment if you didn't have your camera on. I joined a meeting recently without my camera on as per usual, and I began working on the assignment. She stayed completely silent about my camera for some reason, which I loved for that class. I could work in peace. Later that evening, I get a notification on my phone that I got a 75% on today's assignment. This was terrible for me, because it took my grade in her class down to a B, and I lost my 4.0 GPA. I emailed Ms. Stevens and asked if it was a mistake or anything. She said something along the lines of, "I need to see you participating in the class, and because I couldn't, I felt it was necessary to deduct 25% from your grade." I don't have the email right in front of me at the moment. I told her that I didn't feel comfortable turning my camera on, which I feel is totally reasonable. She gave me a hard no and said, "Nobody is watching you in class, they are watching me because I am the teacher. You will get used to it eventually." I was upset. All I want is a little bit of privacy. Sure, not all the kids stare, but we all have moments where we get lost staring. I decided I would turn my camera on, but I wanted her to regret it. I downloaded a super glitchy, flashy, bright, and disgusting glitch effect that I could put over my camera using a plugin for OBS that I found online. It lets you use OBS as your camera, so I could add whatever I wanted. The next day I show up for the meeting, and turn my camera on. A few minutes into the lesson, I turn on the glitch effect, and lower the frame rate of my camera to make it look like I was just lagging. Ms. Stevens asked what was happening, so I replied that, "I think my Wi-Fi is being slow or something." She moved on the lesson, but you could tell that she was starting to get annoyed by this constant flashing on her screen while she was talking. There isn't enough kids in the class for her to simply put me on another page, and I don't think she knows how to turn my camera off herself. I began to enjoy seeing her reaction, so after I finished my assignment, I started messing around with it a little. I started flashing random things on my camera like pictures of Shrek, memes, whatever came to my mind pretty much. She pulled me aside after class. Keep in mind my camera still had the glitch effect going, and she lectured me on how having my camera on like that was distracting me, even though I finished my assignment after only 15 minutes or so. I just said, "You wanted me to turn my camera on, so I did. You never told me what I had to have on my camera." She kind of rolled her eyes a little and just gave in. I don't have to have my camera on in that class anymore. She also apparently emailed my parents about me being distracting, and when I showed the plugin to my parents, they found it hilarious and didn't care all that much. I wasn't distracting any of the other students, and I was already done. No problems here. Edit: a lot of people in the comments are asking if my grade got fixed, and if I contacted the principal. Both of these things happened, and I am sure my teacher got a talking to from the principal. My grade is fixed and I am back to having all A's. Thanks for listening.